Sam, how you doing, dog?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Chance, you got to make sure you got your volumes working. Maybe unmute or something. Hey, everybody! I heard you all clapping when we announced there wasn't class on Thursday. Just keep that in mind when you start asking for extra credit. Hey, so a couple of quick announcements. Y'all contributed $1,180 for the Brazil initiative. So kudos to you all. That was really impressive. And Mariluz is super happy, and so are the kids, and a lot of awesome things will happen as a result of that. Obviously, I'm not there. I am in Colombia, and but I'm here because I'm going to introduce our guest today. And this is, so you can move the slides along. This is who is with us today is Dr. Chenjerai Kumanyika, who is a professor at Rutgers University and a former student of Social 19 way back in the day. In fact, he was in the class the very first time I taught it. My introduction to him was the very first day when I started talking and just kind of going through some things. Hey, Chen, you should be able to hear, by the way. So Jeff, can you work that out with him? There was a young guy sitting over on the side toward the front who was responding to almost everything that I asked. He had an answer for. He had something to say, and just was on point on all of the issues related to the class. And I come to find out that he was 17 years old and just started his college career, and just was awesome. Very cool. Became a TA for the class. Moved on through his college career, probably could have gone on immediately to be an academic, or should have, but didn't, because he decided he needed to pursue music, his other passion. And so he started a group and called the Spooks, and wrote, and they had a fair amount of success back in the day. In fact, he wrote quite a number of gold records, and has a couple of really funny stories. He's probably the only person I don't know if I can say this. He's got a funny. Chen, you got to tell the story about getting kicked out of Snoop Dogg's trailer because you went party with him. Could you just tell that story? Yeah, because that's an awesome story, man. That says something. But anyway, man, wrote several gold records, was really hot in Europe, and but then decided all through all of that, always knew that he was a thinker, man. He was a brilliant mind, and just needed to go back and be an academic, and finally did. He came back, did his PhD at Penn State, and then has moved on from there. But what he's doing is some stuff that, first off, man, I can't say enough about this guy's mind. So that's all. The fact that you all get to hear him today and ask questions, and the key, this is going to work best if you all ask some really awesome questions. But recently, his most recent successes, one has been a podcast that won a Peabody Award. So here is, it's called Uncivil, and was rated back, a couple years ago as one of the top podcasts in the United States. It's about the Civil War, really re-envisioning the Civil War and telling the story from a different perspective. And I have a photo of him on stage doing his speech for when they won the Peabody Award, which is pretty awesome. Has been involved in a couple other podcasts. I won't raise them. If they come up, Chen, you can talk about that. But I'm like, dude, thanks for doing the class, man. Just thanks for bringing your energy to us, and just being part of this, because it's been a great semester so far, and this is a nice lead-in, I think, towards spring break. And Chen is going to be talking about activism today in the broadest of senses. So, listen, that's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to be out, and I'm going to get home before I get drenched because it's about to storm here. And I'm just going to leave y'all to this man right here who is just awesome. Yeah, got so much going on. I can't even begin. So, Joy, can you just come down, though, really quick? Can you make sure that you just pop in front of the camera, you and JD, so he sees, so Chen can see like who we're working with here and who his team is? All right, man. That's it. All right, Chen, it's all yours. Thanks, class, and I will see you after the break.
Bye, Sam.
Hey, check. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. What's up, Chenj?
All right. What's going on? What's going on? Respect.
Not much. Enjoying my Tuesday. Sorry, I'll speak louder.
Can you guys hear me out of this? Can you hear me now? Dope. I also didn't think I introduced myself, although you should be a little bit familiar with me. I'm Joy. I used to work back there as the head director. You probably haven't seen me more recently because I work in the office now with World in Conversation, but I'll pop in from time to time for these kind of things. Cool, thanks. How are you? What's going on over there? Where are you right now?
I'm in Philadelphia, the
Hey,
great
dope.
city. One of the greatest cities in the world. You know what I'm saying? All right. So can we get this thing happening?
Yep.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
All right. First thing I want to say, and I want to maybe, if I can have you, like, I'm looking at people now. I just want to take a minute to connect to y'all because, like, I really remember what it was like sitting in those chairs that y'all are sitting in.
How long
And
ago was that, man?
I got a lot of respect. Come on, man. I ain't gonna tell you that, man. Come on. It was a while back. But the point is like, what I want you to know, everybody, like my man down here in the front with the green hoodie. I see, you right there, bro. And even up in the top corner, there's somebody who got like a white hat that I can see up there. Way in the back, you got like a red shirt in the top, yeah. All of y'all, every person sitting there, this is what I want to say to you. I feel you. Let me tell you why. Because like you're sitting there, right? And it's like you're in class right now. Mm-hmm. It's like you also got a lot of other stuff going on. I remember it's like you have a lot of other classes. You probably got some crazy tests coming up or you just passed. You got and then of course for school, life doesn't stop, right? It's like you got your organizational work you're doing and probably some wild relationship. I remember when I was in your position, I remember this woman smashed my heart into little tiny pieces so bad. Took everything I had to just come to class every day. Forget everything else, just that. So, and then a lot of y'all are involved in political struggles and activism and all those kind of things. A lot of y'all got to work. Y'all have to work more than people had to work in my day too. So from all of that, before we even get into anything because we're not going to agree on everything, but I just want to say, matter of fact, everybody give yourself a hand for just being here and showing up. I feel you. Come on, y'all. Yeah, it's just, I really do, man. One thing we have to do out here, we don't always agree with each other, and like you'll see, I'm somebody who definitely has politics that get called radical, but I believe that we do have to try to be compassionate to each other and we have to love each other because it's hard, man. So having said that, I guess, Joy and JD, y'all are going to help to just interrupt me at the right time so that we make sure we have a nice back and forth flow. But this is the thing I want to say to you that's really important. You all right there in this class, in Social 119, have an incredible opportunity because of where you are right now in the world, where you're at in your life. But I'm scared you're going to miss it. I'm scared you're going to miss it. And the reason why is because somebody, I think, has convinced many of you that being smart is really just about kind of staying in the middle on things, right? That's what being smart is. You don't like extremes. The extreme position is always wrong, right? And what I can tell you as somebody, like Sam said, I won the Peabody Award, my creative work, and also in my organizing work. What I found is that the thing that has made me successful is I found times when really understanding that sometimes the extreme is what's called for. And that really relates to the topic of activism, right? That really relates to the topic of activism. So I want to give you one example of that, and then maybe we can go back and forth. I don't want to talk too long. But just to give you an example of that is me as an African-American man, every right that I have in the world to do, at least in this country today, is because people broke laws. You understand that? It's because people broke laws. It's not because people obeyed the law, was a good citizen, not because they took like the balanced, moderate position and nothing like that. No, it's because people actually broke laws. In some cases, shed blood and went to jail and all those things. That's why I have the right to be a professor in this country. That's why I have the right to vote. That's why I can walk into these companies and strike these entertainment deals. None of those things was the plan when this country started out. You understand? Yo, if y'all hear me, make sure you nod real big because you guys are like little dots on the screen. Okay. And if that's the case with me, that's the case with most people in this room, whether you realize it or not. It's also the case with most of y'all. Women in the room right now. Women, you understand. It was planned for you was not to be at Penn State studying, getting ready to be businesswomen, getting ready to tell your stories, getting ready to express yourself. That wasn't the plan when this country started. It was a different plan. You know, queer people, that wasn't the plan for you. You weren't supposed to be here. So I think that we have to understand that, because I think that sometimes when we think about activism, like what I'm saying is, for you all to be where you are now, that's because somebody took an extreme position. It's not because someone was like a balanced position. Someone took an extreme position, like, yo, I think women have the right to be in school, be educated, do everything men are doing. I think, black people, queer people, all it's like, that was an extreme position. That was not the moderate position. Like, you were going against the laws of the country. You were going against the dominant culture. And so that's why you really got to look at history, right? And I could give a lot of different examples of that in different phases. But I think that that's the thing that you have to understand when you understand activism. And maybe some of y'all think that like all those battles were fought. But one other last piece I'll say, and then maybe we can get a back and forth going, is that actually some of the biggest battles are ahead of us right now, right? Like, we're not necessarily battling slavery, although, as you all will soon see, if you're not already seeing it, some of these work conditions that y'all are about to face are like, they're certainly coercive, right? And so, but I think like, when you talk about, I want y'all to go into a world, right, where you have like childcare. If some of y'all got children, if you want to have children, I want you to go into a world where you got health care, where you're not making a choice about like, damn, do I get this health I need, or can I afford that? I want you to live in a world where you can have a variety of kinds of work and know that you can get paid, that you can find housing. I don't know if anybody in this class is a senior, but if you looked at the housing landscape, it's looking grim. Some of y'all want to go live in New York and live, and like you want to live in places like New York, Los Angeles. I've lived in all these places. It's very difficult to live in those places because of the kind of power arrangement we have. So you see activism happening on all those fronts. So people taking what gets called an extreme position, but is it extreme to just want to have an affordable place to live? Is that extreme? Is it extreme to just want to be a queer person in the world and not have anybody, fuck with you? So there's times when you have to take an extreme position. And if you claim that you're somebody who has ethics and stands for justice, you actually have to put yourself on the line. And it turns out that when it comes to storytelling and creative work as well, that winds up being some of the most compelling work out here, because it's a taking a position on something. So that's let me just stop there for a minute, but I just really wanted to say that.
So just kind of to go back and reflect what he's saying, in essence, he's saying, throughout our entire history as a nation, we have noticed that to be progressive, we have to defy the status quo. So this is set up in order for you all to respond, to talk about what you're thinking when Chenj is talking, and also to ask him questions that you're curious about, and just to get another viewpoint and perspective on just issues that either you're concerned with or that directly impact you. So we just wanted to take time to open up the floor. What's up?
And let me just say this, like, I have a podcast. Let me just say, I have a podcast called On Civil. We got millions of listeners. We got the Peabody Award. I got a podcast called Seen on Radio. It's called Seeing White. Over 3 million downloads. So when I talk about people listening, right, and I encourage you to listen to those, because I can give you, I'm somebody who's just full of historic stories that I think are exciting. To me, history is kind of like, anybody in here in the comic books? Raise your hand if you're in the comic books. Let me see, anybody? few people.
Really?
You know, there's not that many people. Yeah,
Maybe
but
not so
y'all
much the
motherfuckers
comic
is
books,
into
but maybe
Marvel
they're just into
movies, though.
the movies and the Avengers and shit.
Y'all in the see, like 20 years ago, when we was in the comic books, we would be talking about like Iron Man and stuff. We'd be like, "This is exciting! Come on, man!" And people would be like, "Nah, fam, that's you just like a comic book nerd." Now, when Marvel, now that we have Marvel, people understand how exciting those stories are, right? And that's how I see history too. But I'm not gonna like bore y'all by like just telling you a million historical examples unless you ask me. Then I got some for you. But you should check out the podcast to really get in on that and let me know what you think. So I just wanted to say that. I can give a lot of proof to what I'm saying, basically. I got the receipts, is my point.
Can anyone speak, like, have any experience with being a victim or, like, identifying with a group that had to face the extreme so that you make something change for yourself or for your group? Or just aware of anything that's happened?
Or just been involved in anything that you would consider to be a work of activism? We got a couple over here. Can you pass the mic down, please?
So in regards to activism, and so the topic I
Did
was
you
thinking...
actually say your name, man?
Okay,
Introduce yourself.
my name's Naman. Hi.
Naman?
Yeah.
Where are you, by the way?
Raise your hand.
Down here.
Oh, what's up? What's up, fam? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
So the topic that came to my mind during activism was mainly climate change, because recently we've been seeing that kids from school have been taken to the streets and been protesting. And I would say that's like, again, like defying laws, like you're not in school and you're going out and things like that. But my thought was that this has been happening for over a year now, even I would say, but not much has been done from an administrative level. So what do you think about that? That even when people are taking to the extremes, but action is not being taken.
Right. No, this is a great point, right? Is that people have the perception that activism may not be effective, right? I mean, you've had, first of all, a long history of environmental activism. And then you have, from all kinds of communities, including indigenous communities, long history of different kinds of environmental activism. Sometimes it only gets called environmental activism when white people do it. You know what I'm saying? But it was still environmental activism, right? And then of course you'd have, mad respect out to Greta Thunberg. You know what I'm saying? Like, people try to front on her, but she's out there, taking it. And I love her speeches because she keeps it real. She's like, people are like, oh, we think it's so inspiring what you're doing. She just is like real with them. Like, I don't care if I inspire you. That's not my point. Change this shit. You know what I'm saying? This is my future. Right? And you have Extinction Rebellion, right? Which is, now that's a perfect example that you bring up. Because like Extinction Rebellion, where they're literally going out in the street, shutting shit down, tearing things down, stopping things, people would say, well, that's a little too radical. That's extreme. And to me, right, as somebody, like, I'm one of the things I learned, and I got to give mad respect to Sam. Sam is one of the people who taught me how to think. You got to be a good critical thinker. We are literally talking about shaking the computer. We are talking about the future of the planet right now. Like, it's literally sea level rise. Like, is there even any North Pole left? Like, it's going down right now. And it's like, what is the rational response to that extreme circumstance? Is it for you to just kind of sit back and go, well, let's not be alarmed? Be alarmed! You gotta be alarmed! Right? I mean, like, that's, like, I don't know when to be alarmed. Like, I'm gonna tell you right now, this coronavirus, I want to play carefully now. I'm not, I want you to be smart. Like some of y'all's out here tripping about the coronavirus and you ain't even got no flu shot. That's not rational. Like, don't do that. Get the flu shot. Drink water. You know what I'm saying? Don't be like, you drinking 3 days straight. You know what I'm saying? Eating nothing but hot dogs. Like, oh, I'm not worried about the coronavirus. No, that's gonna get you first. But it's like, but yes, be alarmed. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at your travel. Look at where you're going, because this really is a real situation. So first of all, I want to say that from a critical standpoint, the alarmed perspective, the people who are alarmed are the reasonable people. They are the people who are living in reality. If you are not alarmed, you are not living in reality. It's empirical reality. It's not a biased position. It's not a partisan position. It is a scientifically factual position. Now, and I would say that I would challenge the perspective that not a lot is changing. There's been a lot of discussion among people about what's happened. There's been certain situations in which I think one of the major banks just divested actually from certain kind of fossil fuel investment, and we've seen other forms of divestment, pressure on universities to divest. So I think the way you have to look at it is to say, not nothing changes. We keep fighting and nothing changes. But when you look at what has changed, look at the role that activism played in that for climate change and for other things, right? It only happens. Let me tell y'all something. We in this class we deal a lot with dialogue, right? And let me tell you something. Powerful people and white people and men and straight people and people who don't, who are considered not to have disabilities, basically people in positions of power and privilege, they love a dialogue, right? They're like, hey, I know you're fighting for your rights, but tell you what, why don't you just calm down and just explain it to me over a beer? I think that's a little better, right? Women, I know you want the right to vote. I know you want to stop the sexual assault, but why are you so angry? Just calm down, be reasonable, and explain it to me, right? But the thing about it is, change doesn't happen really because of dialogue. Dialogue is a part of it, but it happens when the people who are being oppressed basically shut shit down and say, I will not take this anymore. How did the one dude say, when you throw your body on the gears and levers of power so the machine stops? That's how change actually happens, right? It creates an environment in which a bank has to say, we're making a lot of money from climate change, but we might face a bigger problem if we don't divest from this. So go ahead.
Just real quick, I heard you talk about just like, if you're sitting down with these people that are in power, right? And they're saying, here, have a beer, calm down, I know you're upset about this. And before that, you said something about being too radical. So I'm just wondering how you're seeing passiveness in our society affecting how we enact activism.
Well, one thing I want to say, let me take it here. I think that a lot of times, right, I know, like me, I've been to live my whole life in this body of a black male, right? I'm 6 feet, I'm not that tall, and then as I eat more and more tortilla chips, I become a bigger black male. You know what I'm saying? So people, when I'm talking about a lot of these issues, sometimes I've noticed people don't even hear the logic or the reason of what I'm saying. They just see a black male yelling. And I think that I've seen this applied to Bernie Sanders. They're like, we don't like Bernie. I'm not here. I'm not going to get too much into, well, maybe we will. Fuck it. I don't know what we're going to do. But my point isn't here to campaign for one candidate or another. The point is to say, when I look at how people describe Sanders, they act like the man never made any reasonable arguments. They're just like, it's just anger and revolution and hatred. It's like, how is that hatred? Didn't he say he wants everybody to have childcare? That's hatred? So I think one of the reasons why people back away from radicalism is because they see it as just a form of hatred. They see it as divisive. And that's always been used against oppressed people. They try to say that you're the one who's being divisive, right? So, I think, that was being said back in slavery, right? You can imagine, right? Like on the plantation. The slave jumps up and goes, actually, I don't want to be a slave anymore. And they're like, yo, that's really divisive. And he's like, no, actually, I think slavery is divisive, dog. Not when I bring it up. Feminists get called divisive. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, wait a minute, how am I as a feminist divisive when women are like over half the planet? Right? So I think, but if you see activism as a project of hate, just hating another group, and to be fair, I should say, some activists and organizers do feed into that. Maybe you all have had experiences with that. Some, not all. You know what I mean? You have a response? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me stop for a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Joe, did you have something? Louder.
I can't hear.
Hey, okay,
anything.
cool, great. With what you're saying, what's going around my mind is I would like to get some responses on if there's anything people can think of that they feel like if the perspective on this issue change so that it's not so divisive, it's not such a scary thing or aggressive, if you think there's something that there would be more action behind, like climate change or the actions behind standing up towards police brutality or anything like that. Feminism, anything that you feel like through conversations you've heard that made you stray away, but you felt like this is something that I would stand behind. Yeah.
I feel like most issues are going to be like that, as long as both sides of an issue are having conversations, like you said, feminism, for people who are opposed to feminism or don't really understand what feminism is or what feminists stand for, if like people would sit down and have a conversation about that and be willing to listen to both sides of an issue, I think a lot more in our world would be solved.
I like the point that you bring up about listening. Does somebody else have a comment? Thank you. What's your name, by the way? Thank you for that. I just like to know who I talk to in case you become famous.
Her name was Liz.
All right.
Also, go Pens.
Yeah.
Can we grab another? Oh, never mind. Already on it.
Kind of going off of what she was saying too, that I feel like a big thing now too is that the media kind of portrays like certain sides as not the extremists, because that sounds bad kind of with what you're saying, but the people that are just go too far with things. So like most feminists would agree that like they want to be equal to men and, you know, have equal rights, equal everything, not be above anybody else. And I feel like that's kind of a big thing with both sides, is the right sees the super radical people that are just, that sometimes the ideas just aren't like plausible at all. And the same thing with the left sees the right with the people that they see like the neo-Nazis and think that represents everybody when it really doesn't. And I think everybody kind of has like the same views. It's just actually talking about it that really is a thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. I disagree though. I think people have more than just different views. I think people have different interests. Okay? Let me take women for an example. And this is why, let me just say something like to your point, like you made a point that, you know, sometimes the way things are characterized in media leads to deception. And I think that's true, because a lot of times I sit there and watch the news and I watch, like, this is the thing, y'all. I mean, I'm not trying to stunt here, but I got a PhD. Like, you see these books behind, like, this ain't even half the books. Like, I study is my point, right? And so I'll sit there and watch wonky dudes on, like, CNN or something with a tie say totally historically inaccurate shit. And it flies, right? If you look at the struggle that women had to get in this country just to vote, right? Most men in the country did not think women should have the right to vote. And there was no amount of dialogue that was going to fix that. Women had to actually shut shit down in different ways, because men had an interest in maintaining power. So I see these things as a power struggle. Now, I agree with you that dialogue is part of it. But there's times when dialogue ain't going to get it, because if you are having to dialogue, like how long am I going to dialogue with somebody about my human rights? Right? I mean, it's just a question. How long are we going to, like, think about it. When we're talking about corporations whose investments rely on fossil fuels, your business model relies on destroying the planet for y'all and for y'all's children. Right? Their business model relies on that. What is a dialogue? How much is dialogue going to work there? You see what I'm saying? At some point there has to be coercive power struggle. Now there needs to be dialogue. Here's what I believe in dialogue about. Let's all dialogue in this class about how we gonna shut shit down. But I'm not going to talk to the CEO of Exxon. It's not a dialogue really. It's just like, dog, are you divesting or not? Otherwise we shutting you down. But I also want to say something else. Because I'm talking real slick and gangster here, like I knew all this stuff all the time. Man, when I was y'all age in college, I did not know shit. I was the most sexist dude when I was in college. Because I was like, I had race politics down, right? Because by the time you reach college as a black man, if you don't see that racism is real, then you're not paying attention, right? But I kind of didn't really respect black women the way I should. I kind of was like, yeah, you know, sister, you know, in the struggle for equality, you kind of play the background and I'll play the foreground. I also didn't understand any queer politics, right? Because I looked at gay people. I'm sad to say this, but I really looked at gay people and queer people like they were somehow in conflict with the black struggle, as if there was no such thing as actually like black queer people and queer people of color. I wasn't thinking about indigenous people or like Latinos. I really didn't have like a complex view at that time. And it was through, and so I had a lot to learn at that point, right? Like it was through experiences where I got challenged that I realized like, oh shit, like this is like a learning process, and it's not something where I feel like I've always had it together and I'm still learning.
Hey, Chenj, we have another question or a statement here if you want to give that a listen real quick. Did you say your name, man?
Yeah, what's good? How you doing?
Good. Where you at? Where's the camera? Can we turn? Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Adele, like the singer.
Yeah. Respect. You said you're a singer?
No, like the singer. It sounds like, Adele the singer.
Oh, Adele like the singer. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah.
But it's
No
ADL,
doubt.
not ADL, you feel me?
Yeah. Adele's cool.
Yeah. So my question or statement is towards the climate change and like issues surrounding like natural gas and like crude oil. And what I was gonna say is that like, is there a way to address that issue without being a hypocrite? Because when you really assess the whole holistic view, that everything we touch, use, or like, take advantage of has touched or is from natural gas and crude oil. You feel me? Like our phones, our clothes, like cars, everything we see comes from that. So like, how can we protest like, things like the effects of climate change, like people dying because they live in parts of the world that are suffering from droughts and things like that, but still take advantage of the effects of climate change, through the energy that's produced through crude oil and natural gas?
Absolutely right. This is a great question. I'm gonna try to be a little quicker with the answer. I think, and by the way, I want to talk about Taco Bell because did something happen with Taco Bell recently? I heard something happened with Taco Bell out there. Wait, I used to go to that Taco Bell. Is that Taco Bell closed?
Yeah.
It's
man. Oh my God. I used to eat that horrible food. I don't even know what it was. Anyway, okay, but coming back to your question. That is a thing that people sometimes say, right? Like people are like, well, how can we live these high energy consumption lifestyles and at the same time be out here? Like you're literally at the climate march on an iPhone, which is depleting the environment, at the protest. I get it, right? But I think that the world we live in is one in which we're all that's one of the whack things about living in this environment we live is that we're all forced to participate. There is no such thing as a pure lifestyle. And so if you look at the history of movements, it's just like in slavery, right? Sometimes people was fighting slavery, but even as they was fighting slavery, there was times where they had to kind of still participate in it to be tactical, right? So there's no pure space that you can step totally outside of the matrix and fight from that space. What we have to do is actually fight for things and realize that the fights that we're waging, to actually to institutionalize on a broader level, those fights are going to affect us. At some point, it could be that we have to use less energy, but do we want to just do that individually, or do we actually want to create a structural solution? And let me give you one example is like, when you look at, for example, the kind of things we need to be fighting for climate change, there's like the most of the climate change and carbon dioxide is being released by major shipping companies, things like that, right? It's not about you and whether you recycle, whether Adele recycles, because Adele got like an iPhone. That's not really the major issue. The major issue is these major companies who are investing. That's producing most of the stuff. So I think our movement has to be tactical and focus on that. And I don't think you're a hypocrite, for doing that. But I think it's not a bad idea to think about our own personal energy consumption. In a way, what these companies want to do is convince you that you're a hypocrite, and so therefore you can't do anything, right? And that way that takes them off the hook. But what happened with Taco Bell? So thank you, brother. Thank you. What happened with Taco Bell?
It's closed.
Before we dive into that,
People were sad. They had a visual for this building.
Okay.
That's about it.
We have one more question before we want to
Another
dive into
question?
that.
Okay, cool. No doubt.
Yeah.
All right, so my question to you is, my name is Jason, by the way.
Jason, what's up? Respect.
So I wanted to ask you about kind of more about the black community and some of the divides you see within the black community as opposed, like in terms of just different opinions, people who are trying to go about it, thinking about racism as like, we need to shut shit down. But like, in terms of that, just like the people who are just trying to shut out the white community versus people who are trying to work with it and kind of work through it and no excuses and just kind of that divide there. I just wanted to get your opinion on just kind of the whole scene and see like kind of where you are on where the black community is.
Right. Well, you know, this is a really good and complicated question. And let me just say, you know, like I've kind of gone on a journey, you know, myself. Like, but let me start out by saying, I think that the issues that affect black life, right, are in some ways, in the most profound ways, are also issues that affect other groups of people. That's the camp I'm in. Let me give you an example. When I go out here to Philly, right, whether I go to North Philly, West Philly, whatever part I go, most of the people working the cashier register are black people, people of color, usually black people. At this one shop right I go to, it's all black women. Those black women need health care. They're not getting paid enough at the registers. Their jobs are being threatened because of the automation, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you're starting to see the lanes get less and less lanes, more and more robots. Those black women have to need protection from sexual harassment. You know what I mean? So like those things are black issues to me. When people try to say like that's not a black issue, when somebody talks about a $15 minimum wage, I look at all the black people in this room and I go, yo, y'all are probably, some of y'all working now, and you're going to need a job that pays a decent amount. I hope you get far more than minimum wage. But those are black issues and those are everyday black issues. Like you're going to face the cops. You know, the cops is a complicated issue if you're black, and you will face it. But you face the job, that money thing every day. Childcare, if you have a child, is every day. Healthcare every day. So to me, I think that how we define black issues is important. And in those fights, but it's also true of the white people, of the women, of everybody, no matter what your ethnicity is. Those are also real for you. And this is why I think you got to give respect to the anti-capitalist analysis that says those issues unify people because everybody works, right? And that's important. Now, my thing is like there's a lot of white people I know. Like for example, I do a lot of organizing here in Philadelphia, right? So let me just make it super real for you real quick, and then I can take another question. We fought a campaign to get a white district attorney elected named Larry Krasner. He's the most progressive district attorney in the country. And once he got in office, he said, I'm not going to charge bail on all those lower issues. Like somebody get caught with some weed, all these other kind of things. You know what I mean? Now, I saw him deliver that to a black community in South Philly. He said, we're not charging for these things. And any DA who charges your family for those will get fired. Now, because Larry Krasner is white, should I reject that? That was very real for those black communities. You see what I'm saying? So I think that we have to be smart about what we mean when we talk about black equality, right? Now, I do think that, now let me just say at the same time, when I was in college, somebody who would have came to me, like I told you, when I was in college, I thought I was radical in terms of blackness, but really, I just was tired of taking shit from white people. So what happened was, if a black person would have said to me what I'm saying to you right now, I kind of would have thought they were a sellout. You know, because it would be black people who would say, hey, brother, you know, I wish I could pull up a picture of me with dreadlocks back in the days. I'll get Sam to show you all that. But like, people would come to me and they would be like, yo, you know, the struggles that we are fighting can unify people. And then I would be like, yo, how come you hang with only white people? It just seemed like all the black people who was talking about unifying people hung with only white people at the time. That was how it looked like to me. You know, but like, so I've grown in that sense, right? Because I want to do what ultimately helps us. And I think those issues do unify a lot of us. I don't know if that answers your question, fam, but that's my answer.
All right. Did you want to go to another question, or did you actually want to hear about like the whole Taco Bell thing? You mentioned that twice. So I didn't want to skip over.
Somebody want to talk about it?
Does anyone in the class who know about Taco Bell or the conversation around it, if you're aware at all on what the conversation around it is?
No.
Hello, my name is Isis.
Hey, what's going on, sis?
Hi. From what I've heard, I'm pretty sure that the Taco Bell that was there couldn't make rent. They had increased the rent, I don't know how much by, but they couldn't make rent for that month, and they then got closed down.
Wow. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Did you eat there at that Taco Bell?
I'm not a Taco Bell fan.
That's good. Actually, a good thing because I got news for y'all. Taco Bell is horrible non-food, and none of us should have eaten it, even though I loved it when I was there. Like, this is the thing. But this is one thing I want to say about a vigil for Taco Bell, and I think that's like hilarious and funny. There was a similar thing that happened when I was in school. There was like a pizza place up on Beaver Ave where everybody would go after you had went to the party and you was like a little tipsy and you just needed like you got the munchies and all
Talking
that.
about Canyon Pizza?
Canyon Pizza,
No, it's still
Canyon,
there. It's still there.
Canyon Pizza. When I was there, right? I remember we were often trying to get like as a sort in the Black Caucus, we were often trying to get white people to be like involved in some activism. Sometimes we were like, white people would be like, "I'm not racist, dude. I'm all for black equality." We'd be like, "Cool. So can y'all join us in these struggles here?" And they'd be like, "Nah." And then Canyon Pizza raised, like, they threatened to raise the slice of pizza like 50 cents. Every white person I knew was in front of Canyon Pizza. It was like anarchy. It was out there. It was turning over cars. It was like, no, Canyon, no, 50 cent, right? It was crazy. So when I think about a Taco Bell vigil, it's kind of like, that's good, but it just shows you that people do know how to be activists for things they care about.
Anyone go to that visual in here? You did?
Nobody? You went to the vigil? Oh, okay. He didn't go.
Okay.
You could admit if you was at the vigil,
no,
you know
I
what I
think
mean?
that's interesting. So another part, if I could have a moment of more quiet. Another part that's interesting about the conversation around the closing of Taco Bell is that a year ago around this time, a student had got killed by the police. An international African, who said that? You want the mic? You can chime in too. That's kind of what we want, because what I'm going to get at asking is, how do we come down to deciding what things we care about to put the action behind of? So we can make up an impromptu, started off not so serious, and then it has a big turnout visual for a building that's shutting down because they can't pay their rent. But when it comes to a person of color kind of being gunned down, well, not kind of, being gunned down, and that situation could have went a little bit more differently with no prosecutions. Where's the uproar? Were we not aware? Response. Who's responsible? How do we choose? What do we put our actions behind?
And I don't know if you guys know this, but it made national news. Like, Good Morning America talked about the fact that we had a vigil at Taco Bell. Good Morning America, people. It's still a thing.
Kind of mind-blowing that just a restaurant closing down and getting, posted on Barstool and whatever, just circulating, how like a meme can bring together solidarity, but like in a community here at Penn State and State College, that, when we have a police shooting, and I'm born and raised here, by the way. I knew the Azagi family growing up. They went to the church I went to. Very nice people. So hearing this happen, like, I was kind of shook. And the little response that I saw, not only just Penn State, but like the State College community as a whole take, was kind of upsetting. So like when we're talking about this like meme that somebody started and then it turns into like a real thing, how do people really find solidarity in that, but not with like a tragic event happening within the community that all of you were involved in?
I have a response right here.
My name's Mia. I think the problem with it is that it was a serious issue, and that's why there wasn't the turnout. Like, it was something that had, like, it was, like, polarized. Like, it had, like, charged, like, kind of political views behind it. Like, Taco Bell is not serious, and, like, the closing of it is not serious. I mean, for those who go there, I'm sorry, but, like...
Or work there.
Or work there. I mean, working there is a different, part of that, but I think, like, the deeper issue is it wasn't a serious issue, and that's why there was a rally behind it, and that's why people got behind it, because they knew that there were no consequences going to support like closing down of like a favorite like fast food restaurant, but going to support a family in a time of need that if there's police issues behind it, like there's more surrounding the issue. So coming out and showing your face may face another kind of consequence that going to support a Taco Bell vigil like wouldn't have with it. But yeah.
No doubt.
I'm also curious of what the Taco Bell closing, because I think I heard after she said that rent went up, I think I heard somebody say it doubled, possibly. And I'm wondering what the connections between State College and gentrification are having, because I know in like San Francisco, it's one of the most expensive cities to live in. I stayed with a friend of mine, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom apartment or house was $1.7 million. $1.7 million for a house that could go in this area for $200,000 probably at the most.
Right.
And so
Right.
with State College adding so many high rises, and for the fact that our Attorney General in the state came here a couple of weeks ago to talk about the problem with renting, my question is like, obviously the visual wasn't for that issue, but if people would have thought about it, maybe we could have actually made a bigger conversation about what's happening in this area.
Right, and you still can. You still can. And I want to be clear, like, I don't want to, first of all, let me just say this. Like, I don't think it's about, I'm not here to shame people because somebody showed up at that or because, I think the part of what, Adele was saying, like, I want to protest climate change, but I also got to use all these products. We're all really busy. And I think that's busyness, right? That's by design. We have a political and economic system that's set up so that we all are so busy making profits for other people that we don't even have time to pursue things that are fulfilling to us, including fighting for people's rights or just creative things. But let me just say, I love what you did about connecting the Taco Bell issue to the larger issue of housing increase, because that does affect everybody in this room. When you have to pay rent that's too high, the trend of rents going up, who's benefiting from that? Right? The fact that somebody looks at housing as simply a commodity for their profit rather than a public good that you need. I know students, and some people in this room know students, people who had to maybe even drop out of school because they couldn't afford rent. So, that's a real issue. So the ability to see what the deeper structural issue is in things that seem that way are as important. And one other quick thing I want to say is, you brought up, I think it was Mia brought up the really good point about people are like already depressed. Like, what I'm saying? Like, people ain't trying to go to another protest thing. They're trying to go to something that's fun. The Taco Bell vigil might have seemed more fun. But, I just want to say activism and protest can be really healing and actually a space of like replenishment. Like, I think sometimes people think of a protest as like all anger. I mean, I don't want to say like protest is fun per se. But I do want to say that for a lot of people, I think if you participate in a lot of those spaces, you'll see people are actually enacting a form of love, man, and community support, and that actually can fill you up and is more fulfilling than the alienating, stultifying existence we experience in the rest of our lives sometimes.
We do have one question here, up in the third row. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm not talking about Taco Bell. Hi, I'm Monica, and I'm from China.
Monica.
Right. Hi.
Yes.
I'm here.
Hey, Monica.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, I'm talking about the language we use, specifically about the words racist, and we define people or American by white American, black American, or Asian American, or something.
Yes.
So I'm so curious about why Asians are defined by the geography, but black and white are defined by skin color. And we emphasize so much on the difference, black, Asian, white American. But why we don't call us just brothers and sisters? We all are citizens in United States.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I think this is a really good question. It's like you asked two interesting questions. One is, why are Asian Americans referred to in that way, like Asian Americans and then we still have this black and white terminology? And I think the answer to that question is history. So, I could refer to you lots of podcasts, but one of the things I think that would be really enlightening is to look at the history of Asian Americans in this country fighting for their rights, right? Because I think it's one of those histories that connects the dots. A lot of the things you see going on with citizenship and immigration, Asian American and people who are Asians trying to be Americans were the first people who were fighting a lot of those battles, because a lot of those battles were about deciding who could be a citizen. So when you look at literally how whiteness got created, right? Whiteness is a thing that got legislated, that got created. In the beginning of this country, when this country started, the term Caucasian didn't exist. Do you understand? Who knows what year the term Caucasian was invented? Anybody? It was invented in it wasn't even invented until like the 1780s, around then. You know, like over 100 years after the country was founded, right after people got here. And so people were making whiteness real, and Asians were at the crux of that, you know. And so there's a long history of Asian American activism that sometimes doesn't get talked about at all. And so I think you're right that we have to talk about what unifies us, right? We can talk about being brothers and sisters, but we also got to talk about the very real and different oppressions that people face. And you do need to be real about those racial differences for that reason. So, you know, you've got to study history to understand it. But thank you for that question. And we need to, and not just Asians, but we need to talk about the differences between East Asians and South Asians, because there is a reality of something that I've learned about called East Asian privilege, right? Where we talk about Asians, but sometimes South Asians don't become a part of that conversation in the same way, right? So that's also a thing that has to be discussed.
Dude in the black hat.
Hi. So earlier you were talking about like protesting and going out to protest. I'm right here, by the way. My name's Zach.
Okay, well, is Zach right here? Where? I want to see you. Oh, there you go. I see you. What's up, Zach?
And so in like the past 2 years, there was a lot of issues with shootings happening in school, and all over the country there was walkouts and protests happening in schools to kind of bring attention to it and kind of battle like gun control and keeping schools safer. And I know my high school, during all this, we had a walkout. And there were so many people that wanted to do it that the school actually worked it into the schedule. So it, at that point, like, wasn't even really a protest because the school was dropping everything that was happening so people could walk out. So I just want to know, like, do you think that kind of the idea of protesting due to things like that is kind of becoming devalued?
Oh, this is y'all have some good questions, man. I gotta say, man, I fuck with y'all. Y'all ask some good questions. You know, what happens when a protest gets so popular that it just gets co-opted in different ways, right? Like, and then a protest isn't even a radical thing. Like, the powers that be are not necessarily scared of it. I mean, I think that in the example you gave, first of all, you all should still claim that as a victory, because what that was you earned so much support that you forced the school to basically institutionalize your terms. And I think that that's a victory. But I do think that the question you always have to ask is what will force the powers that be to change what they want to do. And sometimes that's not a protest. Sometimes it's different kinds of protests. Sometimes it's a strike, right? Sometimes it's a certain kind of publicity and pressure. There's all kinds of ways. So protest is not just only one thing. It's not just a walkout. There are ways in which sometimes, like, the powers that be can just get real used to a protest, like you going out and yelling. This is a chess game for justice, and you got to really figure out, like, what's really going to be the thing that they don't want, and then you got to tactically move to create that, right? I mean, I don't want to, you know, if you look at the civil rights movement and a lot of different struggles, even struggles that people have won for like a $15 minimum wage, it's a tactical battle. So, and co-optation, the issue of co-optation is always something we have to be wary of.
Hi.
Hi.
So my name.
Where are you? Who are you?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, yeah, hey. Okay, yeah, whoa, okay, all right. Hey, hi.
Hi, so my name's Katie. He was talking about, I think his name was Zach. He was talking about how the school, like, kind of adjusted their style of, like, their day around the protest. But my high school, when my school did the walkout, like, protesting gun control, they gave every student, they suspended every student that participated. So wouldn't the school, like, adjusting, wouldn't that be beneficial? Because the students aren't protesting the school, they're protesting, like, legislation. So wouldn't it be more beneficial for the school to, like,
Can I rephrase that or pose another question for you?
Wouldn't it be more beneficial?
Hold on, I like that question. I like what she said.
Okay.
I mean, I want to hear your question too, though, Joy. You know, like you're saying, like, yeah, you're walking out. Why are you protesting? It seems like you're protesting the school, right? I mean, I think that those walkouts were often protests that were done in solidarity with a national strategy. So I think that there are things that you do that sometimes are to show solidarity because the spectacle of hundreds of schools across the country walking out in response to a mass shooting is powerful. And it does create an environment in which people have to respond. But that issue of suspension, how do you do that? I mean, you know, I would really encourage people to study feminist struggle, study labor history, right? Getting suspended for that reason is good. I mean, you got to protect people and make sure it doesn't threaten people's lives. But, you know, the reality is it takes some sacrifice. So I think, you know, you have to create, there's some graduate workers out in the West Coast who got fired because they were striking for better rights. And we have to wrap around those people and be in solidarity. So I think that, you know, I think the walkout was the right move. But you do want to think about, you don't want to just be too rash about it. You do want to think through things. You know what I'm saying? And make sure you protect vulnerable people in the process of struggle. Joy, you had a question I want to get. What was your question?
Well, just thinking on top of what she just said and something that was said a little bit later, was going to ask if you could speak or if anyone in the class could attest to the importance of being organized, knowing your information and history, and understanding that sacrifice is what's being asked of you. So it was said a little bit earlier about the visual and for Taco Bell in comparison to something a little bit more serious, and the fear in it of one thing being just a joke and other things being serious and having repercussions afterwards. Could you speak to how that's just, I don't want to say a given and be a little chastising, but just to illustrate what it means and how important it is.
Yeah, should I open it up though, in case someone else has something they want to bring to us? Does somebody else want to?
Hi, right here.
Yeah.
Going back to the, like, how schools would sometimes, allow these protests and, actually cooperate with the students. Do you think that the point of protest should be to be disruptive, to cause attention and to these movements, and maybe them not being disruptive takes away from the protest?
You're saying if they're not sufficiently disruptive?
Yeah, they would be less effective if they are not disruptive.
Right. Well, that speaks to this issue that we're talking about in terms of, co-optation. But I think that everything has to be strategic. One thing I really want to say that's really important is I'm out here advocating radical protests. But it's really important. The most radical and effective protesters I know are planners. They plan out their steps very, very carefully. It's not just about getting mad and running out randomly and doing something. Because people can get hurt in the process of protest. People do get arrested. I got arrested a year ago during the Occupy ICE protests in Philly. I was sitting there watching the TV. I saw that Philly, which is supposed to be a sanctuary city, was locking up people in this city, locking up people who are immigrants, Latino, Vietnamese, Black, African immigrants, and putting them in, like you said, taking people's kids. And I just reached a point where I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't sit here and tweet anymore. I have to put my body on the line. So I joined a protest that happened, and at a certain point the police came, and at a certain point the federal government came down. Now this is really important. The protesters who planned that were organized, and they told everybody there, they said, listen, if you can stay or leave now, but if you stay, it's federal charges. And they were like, if you actually stay in this area, they showed a particular area, they said, this area is federal charges. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I stepped right out of that area. I was like, I'm down for the struggle, but I don't need those Fed charges. I stepped right back. And so it's I participated in a fast when I was in Clemson University because when they passed the Muslim ban, because all of the international students were about to be, have their travel blocked. And I wanted to go on a hunger strike. I was fired up. So I went to one of my mentors and I was like, yo, you got to do something. Let's go on a hunger strike. And he was like, Lil, let's go on a 7-day fast. And then I was like, that's not radical enough. We got to do a strike. And then he goes, if you want to do a hunger strike, you got to be prepared to die. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe a fast is good. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, you got to plan, right? And I think it's really important. And it is a sacrifice, though. I mean, let me just say, when I got arrested for I got arrested during the ICE protest. When I was sitting in jail, it was a real hot, well, actually, it was like in the back of the police van after the ICE protest, I was arrested. The sense of peace came over me because I knew that was the place I was supposed to be in the universe. I was doing whatever I could do to stand in solidarity. You know what I mean? Like, because they say, like, if you wonder what you would have done during these points of history, some of it is, what are you doing now? This is one of those times.
Hello again. My name is Isa2. We talked briefly before. But,
Isa2, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again, too. My response is going to be to your question. I'm sorry, can you remind me what your name is? It starts with a J. Joy?
Yeah.
I just want to say it is extremely important. I'm from Herndon, Virginia, so I'm from Northern Virginia, and I didn't realize until I came here for the first time, because I'm a first-generation student, I didn't realize how important it is and how much, like, people like to think that slavery was really, really long ago, and all these civil rights things were very, very long ago. It was very, very recent, and it very much still affects people. Generational wealth is a thing. Like, those different microaggressions that are present, racism, those things are still very real. So being able, especially here, like going to these different organizations, there are different organizations on campus, and I'm a person of color, so I'm going to say people of color orgs, but like Black Caucus, those are different places that you can go and be educated of the different things that are happening in the world, things that are like directly influencing you that you might not even realize. And if you're a person in this room and you feel like you don't have any privilege, you do. You do have privilege. Everybody has privilege. I have privilege. Like, there are different things that we should be mindful of, and we should know, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, there is change that needs to be made, and you should know where your place is in that change and what you should do in order to combat that.
CJ.
Thank you.
Hi, CJ Thorpe. I was also responding to Joy's question and kind of like going back to what you said at the very beginning of this talk, and how like you have to actually like care and like actually you can't be in the middle for these kind of things. I think that's like a very important part, because like if you really care about, you know, the protests that you're talking about, or like whatever kind of activism you're talking about, you really have to research it so that you're able to stand up against any type of opposition that comes towards you. Like, because people will really press you out about whatever you're going to do. Like, it doesn't matter if it's something that's like for the betterment of everyone. Like, if you're talking about like, oh yeah, like I'm trying to do something for like, I'm trying to have free college for everybody. Like, someone is going to oppose that, and you're going to have the data to support why you're doing it, so that not only so that you can oppose these kind of things, but also so you understand the importance of what you're doing. So I think that's just like, I think it's just going back to what you said at the beginning. Like, it all just came full circle for me right there.
Powerful. I love it. Who else got something to say? I'm listening now.
Hi, me again. I still have a question. I know you love history and you talk history a lot. And
yes.
Right. I'm minor in history too. So I know history is really important, but there are several people they don't like history, and some people they never look beyond the surface. And how to make sure the protests or the conversation can be efficient? Because if people just stand in their shoes and never understand each other, we see people are fighting for the equal rights. And some racism problems, it has been there for several hundred years, but it's still here. How do you feel?
Yeah,
How do you see this?
Yeah, no, I agree. They have, and I would say, on this point of history, I'm sorry, I gotta just professor out for a minute on y'all. Look, y'all, we have really bad history in this country, and I want you to be intelligent people. And the only way you can be intelligent is by studying history. For most of my life, I did not understand a lot of the history. But people in America have a mythical sense of history, so you got to study it. And I got some great podcasts that can help you, but beyond my podcast. And let me just say, just to be crystal clear, if you in this room have never read feminist histories of the United States, you don't know shit. You don't. I love you. You know what I'm saying? We people. You can follow me on Twitter, IG, we could build, but also like you don't know shit. If you haven't studied queer history, if you haven't studied radical black tradition, labor history, you cannot. So a lot of times what happens is I get invited into like these dialogues about stuff, Monica, where people are like, yeah, Chinch, we want you to talk to this person about X issue. And what I say is like, you know what would be better is if this person, I got a book for that person and they just need to read it first. Because if that person comes into a conversation without any information, it's not really helping them because they're uninformed and they're just telling me what they think, right? So we need to create spaces where we can do that kind of education, right? And that's why I think y'all have a tremendous opportunity because y'all are more creative. Just from the questions in here and the way y'all are thinking, I think you can push this stuff to a whole nother level. You know, I have a sort of one leg of my work is in Hollywood. There's a lot of people in some of these documentary companies who are really looking for people who can tell stories about history and do it in more interesting ways, right? There's organizations who are realizing we need better ways to tell stories about social justice. So you all have like an incredible opportunity right now to shift things. And I've seen people from this class do it before. I know people in this class, you probably have met some of them. We're out here in the world. You're part of a family now. And I want you to reach out to me and to try to do that work. But a big part of that work is study. You got to study.
All right. So we're coming down to the last few minutes. Chandra, do you have anything that you would like to leave our class with before they go on to break?
Let's just you know, so y'all about to go on the spring break.
Cold. Can you hear me?
Yep. This is
Hallelujah.
No
one more
time?
student. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, we don't have time. I'm sorry.
Oh, we don't have time
We're
for a
running
student?
out.
All right. Well, this is what I would say, man. You know, all of the radical projects of social justice are projects of love. So we can be more whole people in the world. So love on each other, y'all. Reach out to me.
Could we all hold up with Packin real quick? I have an announcement after this, and I'd really like you to hear what he has to say before we start getting out of here.
Yeah, so holler at me. Just holler at me, whatever. Follow me on this old application called Twitter. Come there. Continue the conversation. Respect, y'all. Respect. I appreciate it, all right?
Thanks, Chen. All right, so just the last final thing before you guys get wrapped up and take off out of here. Here representing World of Conversation again, it is recruitment season as we like to call it. So you will be in your dialogues. You may have received a card. It's can you pull up this? It's called an opportunity card. Facilitators will be handing this out to people, not only to people they think would be good facilitators, but people that they would also like to see in our International Dialogues class, which is called IDCP, International Dialogues Practices and Concepts, or Concepts and Practices. So there's that. There's chances to be an intern, whether that be, on the ops and logistics sides of our programs, whether that be, on the tech team with, Joy, myself, and Jeff. You could also be what we call a dialogue initiator, and that's kind of part of my job where I go and just make sure everything's set up and running smoothly. But we do have different opportunities for anybody that's interested in the slightest to be a part of our center. So we just wanted to let you all know that. Our registration site is up. If you do want to become a facilitator, we have what we call tryouts. Those are going to be the last weekend of March, so the 27th through the 29th, and also April 3rd through the 5th. The time slots are open all weekend, and they're rather flexible, so please, if you have the slightest interest, go ahead and sign up. Thanks for your time, guys.